Game. 4th and goal. And they're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws caught. Foles, touchdown.
In front of the letters, nods yes, the wind, the 1-2 pitch. Swinging a ground ball left side, Castro's got it, spins, throws, he got him! A perfect game for Roy Halladay! 27 up and 20.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Trending for Four Quarters, only on DSM Media. I am your host, Phil Stiefel, and I'm honored because she showed up. You know, that was step one. We've got a very special guest, one of my favorite podcasters out there, Football Kelly. You might hear her podcast on Eagles Unfiltered. She does a great job. She's got about 30 plus episodes. She just had a great one drop yesterday or today with Farzy, Mark Farzetta. Great episode, great listen. Welcome to the show, Football Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
Super honored to have you here. I got to say, before we talk Eagles, I got to ask you, you've had in your 30-plus episodes a who's who of guests, and I think I had some pretty cool guests, but you've had some amazing ones. Who is your favorite guest you've got to interview in the first year and a half that you've been doing shows?
I mean, it's honestly a really tough question to answer because it's just
don't want to upset any of them.
Well, it's not just like upsetting them because it's just like every single time somebody says yes to you, you feel like so honored that like they're willing to take out the time to do it. But when I was starting to consider and entertain the idea of doing a podcast, like I wasn't necessarily like super confident that I would be able to do one. So like I just started putting out feelers, like who would I even ask to do it? And like, what would the concept be? How would I differentiate myself from like other content producers on the Eagles beat? Because let's face it, like there's so many Eagles fans that are diehards that have their own thing going on. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I want to like create my own lane, try to do something different, try to add something new to what's going on in the Eagles sports media like era, I guess you'd call it, with podcasts nowadays. So I guess the most special, I don't know if it's the best, but I think the most special one for me was when Jennifer Slay said yes to coming on because she was the first one I reached out to.
Okay.
And behind the scenes, people don't know this, but behind the scenes, me and her tried to record several times and like the technology wasn't working. Like we tried to use different like recording like platforms and her computer wasn't working or my computer wasn't working and it just wasn't allowing us to record anything. And it was super frustrating and I felt awful about it. It like took us such a long time to figure it out and like troubleshoot the problem. And at the end of the time, she was like, I really have to go. Like, I had to get the kids to bed, like whatnot. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I wasted your time. I'm so sorry. And she was like, let's like figure this out. Like, let's try to do it another time. So when I say she's the nicest human being in the, like on the planet, like, I mean it. Like, she knew how much it meant to me. She knew that it was my debut episode. Like I wanted her to be like my introduction to the podcast space. And so when she was willing to do it again and made more time for me, like I understand, like, people are busy. They've got things going on. She's got kids. Like, her husband's in the NFL. Like, a lot's going on in her life. When she made extra time just to, like, sit down and chat with me about what was going on with the team, even though they were bad at that point. Like, they weren't playing well. Like, she was just so genuine, so, like, kind and, like, willing to, like, answer all the questions I had as genuinely as possible. And so if nothing else, like, I just remember that interview so specifically because it was my first, and it was just a little bit of a trial and error type of situation. And she was just an incredible person to really get to know during that time. So definitely Jennifer Slay.
I understand. It definitely can be an issue sometimes with equipment, internet connections, so many different things. And I remember, it's a total side tangent, but in college I had a radio show, and it was small channel, obviously, in college, but we did a show and we recorded we did a show for two years. The best episode, it was towards the end of our senior year. And I get a phone call at the radio station. I'm old. So this is, you still had to call in. You didn't have cell phones back then,
Right.
on campus. Again, I'm old. And I get a phone call at the studio from one of my roommates saying, dude, when are you guys going to go live? I'm like, well, we just finished a 2-hour show and it was amazing. Great interaction, great guests and all. They're like, I looked around and I looked behind the equipment. I never flipped the switch on.
Oh, wow.
So we did a 2-hour amazing show with guests and everything else and never flipped the switch on. So, it happens, obviously. I did click go live. So we are live right now. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Make sure everybody's sharing it out. Drop your questions, comments for Football Kelly in there. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. We appreciate it. So let's talk football. Let's talk our Eagles. That's what we love. That's why you're here. I know you went to the open practice the other day. The one thing I love about when following you and seeing your posts and your shows, you're a very positive person. And you keep the positive outlook, which is what I try to do. I believe in that power of positivity when talking and looking at the Eagles. I put out a post the other day, got a lot of great interaction, and I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with it. I said the other day that Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, I have 110% bought into them as leaders of this football team. Whether that'll translate to wins or losses, we don't know. But I'm buying in as leaders. What are your thoughts on them as the people? Not necessarily whether they'll win us games or take us to the promised land or not. How are you feeling about Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, the person?
Yeah, I mean, the thread that has kind of been carried from last season on to this season with Jalen Hurts has been everybody who's pointed out his leadership. And you can't deny that a person who is able to lead a locker room has a powerful force. Leadership is so crucial to that position at quarterback. I think that Jalen Hurts is proving what we needed in a Philadelphia sports world where everybody's a critic. Everybody will kind of go into scrutiny on every word you say. And the last guy struggled with that.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Hurts is very polished with what he says. He's very refined with what he says. And I think that it resonates well with his locker room, with the players in that room. It also resonates well with a lot of Eagles fans who were frustrated by the lack of transparency on what was going on before the Wentz trade went down, because there's a lot of people, myself included, who really supported Wentz and wanted to see him figure it out. Like, you were paid, like the money was there, like you were supported, and maybe you didn't like the second round pick, and maybe a lot of fans didn't like the second round pick so early on in your quarterback franchise, record breaking, contract. But to be honest, what would have happened if everything fell apart last year and we didn't have Jalen Hurts? What would we be looking at right now? So it's hard to say in retrospect if Carson Wentz would have struggled as much as he did last year if the Eagles didn't draft Jalen Hurts. But you've seen time and time again where really good quarterbacks can overcome those things. And so Jalen Hurts coming in as a rookie quarterback without a preseason last year, who is, really in this really awkward quarterback room, handled it so well. Like, I don't know if anybody gives him enough credit for the fact that he handled it as well as he did last year. And then stepped into that game in Green Bay. And I honestly thought there was a chance they could have won that game if he went in a little earlier. I know a lot of fans thought, like, oh, the defense started playing better, like right when Jalen Hurts went in, and that's not a correlation on what Wentz was doing. I mean, it goes to say, like, Jalen Hurts is a team player. Like, he's definitely involved in getting people rallied on the sideline. He talks to his players. He tries to get involved on the sideline. So I expect to see that a lot this year. I expect to see more than we did with Carson Wentz on the sideline. And although I might say that Carson Wentz is a more gifted quarterback talent that everybody can't deny, like 6'5" type player, Jalen Hurts has a lot of the intangibles that you honestly don't have unless you have been that guy for a long time. He is a very commanding presence, even if he's not saying a lot. And every single day you hear the beat reporter saying he's on that field 30 minutes, 40 minutes after practice. And if your quarterback is that guy, who are you to say I'm not going to be that guy as well? He's leading by example. And when it comes to Nick Sirianni, there's still so much to be written on who he is as a coach, but I love the duality of him. I think I commented on this with Marc Saulino during the episode this week, that, he's wearing like player shirts and like trying to be this like player guy, this player's coach. And it's really fun to see his interaction with them, his enthusiasm. And then you hear during the actual practices, he's laying down the law. Like, you've got to get ready. Like, you've got to be learning these things on the spot. And that's the kind of thing that I feel like players can feel they're actually developing through. And in previous coaching staffs, we struggled to see any real growth when it came to the players. So hoping to see, especially on the wide receiver core, some definite steps forward for these younger players.
Yeah, so you actually bring up a great thing with the wide receivers. We'll get to that in a second. But you said how well Hurts handled it last year. And that's something I've been talking about since last year, because people forget the same situation he went through here with Wentz. And yes, you first mentioned him as the former quarterback. Then you used his name. And George knows I don't like to mention his name because I try to move on from the past and focus on the future and the current. But I was a huge Carson fan. But Jalen Hurts went through the same exact thing in Alabama, and he handled it like a pro as a 19-year-old kid. Why wouldn't he handle it as a pro now? You know what I mean? So he's used to this kind of adversity, doubt, whatever you want to call it. So, and I mean, he went through it at Alabama, went to Oklahoma, and still made it to the championship game. I don't know if it's the championship game or the semifinal game, where he lost to Alabama. He's used to this, and he's used to having to prove the doubters wrong. So, again, I don't doubt his ability to at least put 110% out there, lead these guys forward. I'm rooting for him. I've been rooting for him since the day he got benched for Tua in Alabama. So I really, truly hope he does well this year and proves, as I think George said here, doubters, not he forget the words he used in our comments section here, doubters, not haters. Someone else said haters in the comment section. Yeah, he proven those doubters wrong is what I'm hoping for.
There's not enough tape on Jalen Hurts to say whether or not he can be successful in this league. As much as you want to criticize poor performance here and there on the last few games of the season, what he did against the Saints and the Cardinals, in my opinion, was phenomenal. And you have to have context to the situation. No rookie quarterback is thrown into that atmosphere and expected to do much. I mean, Carson Wentz had the worst season of his career, and nobody thinks that, like, he sucks as a quarterback. He is, worth a third round and possibly a first round pick in this league. I mean, that doesn't mean that a team thought he was, Jared Goff even. Jared Goff wasn't even traded for that much. So those two guys are going to be compared until the end of time. People are constantly going to compare Jalen Hurts to what Carson Wentz is doing in Indy. But let's remember that the Colts were a playoff team last year. The Eagles struggled to stay healthy enough to win 4 games. So there is context to this whole situation. Much as the players in that locker room are doing for him right now.
And he had a tattered offensive line. So just like Carson did, wide receivers, you brought him up a few moments ago, had a very poorly built wide receiver, core last year. It's better this year with, Devontae Smith and all. But, it's not like he had all these amazing weapons, to perform at an extremely high level. What do you think of the wide receivers this year? I mean, I know you were at the open practice the other day. I know the 53-man roster came out. There's a lot of interesting conversations going on with the skill positions, the running backs, the wide receivers. When I put a post out there asking for questions for you, my man Scotty asked what you think will be, how many wide receivers they'll keep, 6, 5, 7, whatever. Myself and George gets ripped all the time because we think Arcega-Whiteside is going to make the team, not because he's the best wide receiver, just for other reasons. We think he's going to make the team. What are your thoughts on the wide receivers that they got right now? Does Arcega-Whiteside make the team or not? I still think he does over Hightower. Do they keep 6 though? If they keep 5, which some people are saying, then he's gone. But what are your thoughts on how adding Devontae Smith to that core all of a sudden makes everybody else better?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting situation the Eagles have at the wide receiver position, because there isn't really, outside of maybe Fulgham being a 50-50 guy, another guy like JJ that could win those contested catches outside of Devontae Smith. But you do think, at least I think, you need that value on special teams to be that back-end wide receiver guy. At the end of the day, I think Hightower has a little bit of an edge because he could be a special teams player. And Fulgham and Wes Watkins, you see Jalen Reagor, obviously, and Devontae Smith being locks. I personally don't see JJ making the roster. I know that was something that we talked about in the comments before the show. I would love him to prove me wrong. I'm not trying to root against any player that's on this team. If he's able to, demonstrate in a couple of games that he could be an influential player and take on some special teams responsibilities, maybe he does get some attention from this coaching staff that's trying to make hard decisions. In my opinion, we're probably going to keep 4 running backs, and then maybe 5 wide receivers. We really need depth on the O-line. We really need depth on the D-line. I personally think that 5 wide receivers is probably enough to suffice for the moment. Especially because you're keeping Ertz now. People didn't expect Ertz to be on the roster this year. Ends up that, he just might be a starting tight end. We might be doing more of a, 12-man formation situation than you would have originally planned. But I don't really think that there's a space for J-Jaw to be on this team, looking at the full roster and what you're cutting down from getting to 53.
I'll say I wasn't I keep saying that Jay Jaw is going to make the team, but there's always that doubt in my mind. I'm just trying to, give this kid a chance and all. But I think the Hightower injury might give him that opportunity. Hightower could start on that, injured reserve list with, chance to come back later in the season. That gives, Jay Jaw that last spot maybe. If they go 5, then he's obviously done. And, like I said, you said running backs 4, absolutely. But again, just like there's some tough calls with Ortega-Whiteside and Hightower and, these guys at wide receiver, you look at it, you got Miles Sanders and you got Boston Scott. I actually thought Boston Scott was
Gainwell.
I'm sorry?
Gainwell is going to be a receiver out of the backfield for sure.
Absolutely.
So
Well, that's what I was going to say. I thought Scott was like
keeping at running back. It almost doesn't make sense to keep 6 wide receivers.
I could almost see. I always. You don't want to say 4 and 6. I kind of feel like there should be 10 in that group. So you might keep a 5th running back and keep only 5 wide receivers. It's a good point because you got Sanders, you got Boston Scott, you got Gainwell, you got Kerryon Johnson, you got Jason Huntley, who I'm actually a big fan of, especially on special teams. Which George said we should talk special teams. Huntley is a guy that could return kicks. You still got Jordan Howard there. You've got a bunch of other guys that aren't going to make the roster. There's no chance of it. So maybe that's the way they go. I would have told you 2 weeks ago before Nick Sirianni raved about him that Boston Scott might actually be the odd man out because of Kenny Gainwell. But now, Nick Sirianni just raves about how much he loves Boston Scott.
I've been on the Boston Scott is on the bubble thought process for several weeks now, and it actually surprises me how much it seems like that won't happen anymore. At the practice they introduced Boston Scott, they didn't introduce Jordan Howard, they didn't introduce Kerryon Johnson, they didn't introduce most of the running backs. They introduced Boston Scott, and I was just like, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I guess this is a guy that they really are hot to keep on this roster.
I didn't think he was going to make the team last year. I remember being at the Eagles Monday Night Football game against the Giants in 2019, end of the year in December. It was a rainy game, huge comeback. And I just remember watching him on the field and be like, it was my first time seeing him live in person, being like, yeah, I mean, he's okay, but he's nothing special. And he just keeps holding on because whether he's a good team player, good teammate, whatever, he people like him. He's just not as fast as people think. He's just not as strong as people think. And I think you could do better. And I think ultimately Kenny Gainwell will be pushing him off the playing field pretty well.
Yeah, you have to hope that the rookie is going to be able to steal some snaps from Boston Scott if that ends up being the case. But you have to wonder, is Kerryon Johnson literally almost out of the league? Is Jordan Howard almost done his career after they had such strong beginnings in their career in the NFL? That would surprise me if neither one of them made the team. I was thinking that at least we'd have one power back behind Miles Sanders, just as a change of pace kind of wide receiver, because running back, because Miles Sanders is a receiving running back, and he's definitely going to be used in that capacity. We saw at the practice that he was catching balls from Jalen Hurts on just different routes, and so they do intend to use Miles Sanders in that run game and passing game. It is going to be interesting to see who ends up on the field during these plays, because if you have all these different wide receivers, running backs doing all these different things, I'm curious to even know what the offense is going to end up looking like. You're going to have to be really aware as the quarterback who's on the field right now. What can we do? What can we call? Because who's available to you at that moment?
So you keep bringing up the open practice, got about 5 minutes left with you here. Was there anything else that stood out in the open practice to you? Anybody that jumped off the page, things you saw? We're doing a big DSM tailgate and open practice show at the next one on the 22nd. You should come, join your tailgate and all. We got a huge party. We're giving away a Devontae Smith jersey at the tailgate.
Give me the deets, all right? Just let me know.
Yeah, I will send you the details on that. So who stood out to you? What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, it stood out to me that Zach Ertz's hair is very, very bright. It stood out to me that Quez Watkins is really coming in strong. Like, he looked great out there. I was looking at him like he was a top, like, definitely a wide receiver 3 option, if nothing else. Like, everybody's talking about the left tackle, like, competition, and I'm like, yeah, that's great and all, but, like, that's the one that's just, like low-hanging fruit in some ways. Quez is going to potentially win a starting role that nobody anticipated. Like, I'm almost certain that he's going to fight Fulgham for another opportunity to play on the outside, with maybe Rager playing on the inside. Rager looked good. I think that it's almost a little bit of a blessing in disguise, and it sounds strange to say that, but a blessing in disguise that Devontae Smith is taking less snaps in this offseason, because we know he's working, like, constantly working. He's going to be healthy for the season. He's going to be good. He is diligent. These other guys are getting these reps because they need them, and he is, going to benefit from having more talented people on the field with him because of that.
Well, we got a question here from my man Jason here. Check it in. Did you notice? Well, first off, from what you've seen online and all, but also at the practice, anything on Zach McPherson? Your thoughts on him? Because I'm ecstatic with what I've seen so far online about this kid.
Yeah, it was really strange because he ran out to, like, play on the field, and I was like, it feels like sacrilegious to watch somebody else wear 27 after Malcolm Jenkins wore it for the Eagles. So that was, like, my initial reaction, just to, like, be like, whoa, okay, he's in 27. That feels weird. Kid looks good. Like, I think that he needs a lot more development. So I'm not going to say, like, he should be a starter, but I think it's almost beneficial for him to have Steven Nelson come in, recently, because that helps his development on either side of the ball. He'll understand the game from a veteran's perspective, and it sounds like Slay has really taken him under his wing and tried to give him more understanding of, you're doing this, you should, consider doing this, and, like, in the moment trying to, and that seems to be a trickle down effect from this coaching staff, is in the moment when you're making mistakes, like, addressing them right there. And we haven't seen that in previous coaching staffs. And honestly, like, if you think about all these different players that we've had over the, like, course of time that we've drafted, and they just fall off, like, nothing happens with them. I was so hopeful that, J-Jaw would be a guy that would develop under Sirianni, and I literally watched him on the field, and he was dropping everything, and I was just like,
that breaks myself and George's heart so much.
I really, really want him to prove me wrong. Maybe it was a bad night for him. It really hurt me to, like, not be able to root for him to, like, come back. But we've got these young rookies in McPherson, who was taken later than we ever wanted a cornerback to be addressed in this draft. Everybody wanted one in the second round. And, of course, our first and second round player were not playing in that open practice. So it's a little frustrating that we didn't get a cornerback earlier, but McPherson looks to be like a potential diamond in the rough.
No, that's good. You brought up a good point, and I brought it up on this show 100 times. The Steven Nelson signing is huge for McPherson because it gives him the opportunity to just take his time. And I've said it also. No rush. I was wrong last year because I thought the same thing was happening with, Kayvon Wallace last year. That Wallace by week 3, 4, 5 might be sliding into that starting role because I was high on him. But McPherson, I can honestly see him taking over as a starter within week 4 or 5, opposite Slay. And then that actually slides Steven Nelson into the slot. And then you move, Avonte Maddox as your fourth nickel cornerback, as a backup safety, that flex role, which his rookie year, he was his best year when he was at, flex, a fourth cornerback, a safety when they needed a third safety, doing whatever, stepping up on the line. That's when Avonte Maddox was at his best. So I think the Steven Nelson thing has made the Zach McPherson thing and growth so much more important and so much better. And patience. Patience is the key. We're not patient Eagles fans and Philadelphia fans. So it's great to see a little patience with Zach McPherson happening.
Yeah, we're not a patient bunch, and Howie Roseman's kind of buying him some extra time, some extra leeway. It's just frustrating when you're a fan base that's like ready for these guys to start performing. You have Andre Dillard, who's literally played like how many games, and he's already hurt again. Like, the frustration that you have with some of this injury stuff is gonna wear on you. So it just sucks that like some of these guys give you a bad taste on like Howie Roseman's ability to draft, and then you just assume that everybody after them will suck. But it seems like Howie Roseman's pretty good at drafting later in the rounds, because Milton Williams seems to be very promising from what we've heard on him. Jordan Mailata was a steal in the 7th round if he's going to be the answer at left tackle.
Absolutely.
Let's be for real. So let's honestly look at the full picture. I know that's hard to miss out on a 1st round pick. We have 3 next year. Cannot miss on those. Definitely need to upgrade on both sides of the ball next year. And the 2022 draft looks like it's absolutely loaded. So hopefully with Wentz potentially being available week 1, he keeps us in that 3rd 1st round pick opportunity for next year.
Hopefully. Well, again, I've already taken up all your time for the night, so thank you so much for joining me. This is an honor to have you on the show. Again, Football Kelly on Eagles Unfiltered. She does a great podcast. Her episode with Mark Farzetta just dropped this week. Great episode. Do you have any other guests coming up, book that you want to announce, or is that still secret stuff there?
No, I don't think I have secret stuff necessarily. I'm recording with Mike Clay from ESPN tomorrow on a fantasy football episode, trying to give people little expectations on what the Eagles are doing. He's an analytical guy, lots of numbers, he actually creates the forecast for players for their projections on the year. So getting his insights on what to expect on the fantasy level and the Eagles 2021 year, because he's from this area, and it's good to talk ball ahead of the season on the fantasy level even. So should be fun. Definitely excited to talk to him about that, and definitely appreciate you having me on tonight.
Much appreciated. Again, make sure everybody following this show follows Football Kelly at @football_Kelly. She's one of the best. Appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for coming on, Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot.
See ya.
All right. Again, thanks everybody for listening to that portion of the show with Football Kelly. Now we're going to start rotating in some other guests onto this show. First one in the room here, we got Marc, CEO of Statement Games, one of the best fantasy sites out there. If you haven't ever checked out his site, statementgames.com. Great site. I see the banner in the background with the logo. Love it. What's up, Marc? How you doing?
Doing all right, man. It's been a while. How's everything going?
Absolutely great. We just wrapped up Football Kelly. Now we're bringing you in. We're bringing in Mr. Justin, not Sean Connery here. We're going to call him the Albany's, authority on the New York Giants. Writes a great blog, FromMyChair.com. Check him out. We greatly appreciate that. Guys, this is the part of the offseason where, as an Eagles fan, I like to start taking a look at our division rivals. You guys are both Giants fans, Giants people that cover the team. Follow it super closely. Marc, you're a season ticket holder for what, 30 years now?
They've been in my family for a while. I personally have had the ticket since the new stadium opened, so I forget when that was.
That's awesome.
So, Justin,
2011, I guess.
Yeah. Justin, tell us about your fandom and where your blog started and stuff like that.
Well, I've been a fan since like the 80s. My dad, my uncle, my grandfather, just we've always been Giant fans, and I just kind of followed the team, basically since I came into the world. So I've just always followed the team, like the team. Eli Manning is a great inspiration to me and all that. So it's just nice to vlog about something that I'm passionate about.
Awesome. So guys, I did like a whole boatload of research prepping for this section on the New York Giants, and I left my notebook at work. So I wrote down before the show started in 3 minutes, just key points here. So I'm going to really rely on you. So as an Eagles fan, before we talk about the Giants offseason and what we expect of them this year, are you guys still really upset that we let the Washington football team win in week 16 or 17 last year? Mark,
I was going to say, hey, look, you know what? When you only kind of put up 6 wins, you can't really get mad at kind of anything. So, I let it go. I let it go kind of a while ago.
Yeah, I would say I let it go too, but in the moment it was pretty frustrating. I mean,
I just couldn't understand.
Hey, don't get me wrong. At halftime,
because,
I'm like,
I mean, but come on now. I mean, did you really want to make the playoffs with 6 wins? Come on. I mean,
yes.
Okay. That's how I want.
Yeah.
I want to make the playoffs with 6 wins too. All right.
Yeah, for the playoffs, absolutely, you want to make the playoffs.
Yeah, you start running through these different scenarios. All right, you know what? You owe Tom Brady one. He's going to come back into your building week 1. Next thing you know, by the end of the first quarter of that game, here I had the Giants going to the Super Bowl. But then again, I guess every fan kind of does the same thing,
I mean, making the playoffs is important for young players. George jumping in already. Time for Danny Dimes talk. That was the first thing I want to ask you guys. Justin, I'll start with you. How important this year is. I mean, I wrote down Daniel Jones. We're going to talk about Saquon. A bunch of different people on the Giants, outlook here. But I think everything is going to have to revolve around Daniel Jones. Does he take that next step? I don't think he will. I think he's probably one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL at this point that are starting, because I just haven't seen much, again, except for when he ran for 600 yards against the Eagles. So, Justin, what are your thoughts on Daniel Jones and whether he can take that next step forward in the progression this year?
Yeah, I think he can. I think he's got to do a couple things, though. I think he's got to first be upright. The line's got to protect for him. He can't be a punching bag. He can't be, ducking sacks and all that. He's got to protect the ball. He can't be fumbling as much as he has. I think if the line protects him and he cleans up the turnovers, he could have a good year.
Mark, what are your thoughts on Mr. Danny Dimes, as George likes to call him?
I guess that's a lot of ifs here, but look, I think he actually has proven a lot here. I mean, from watching everything from an eyeball perspective, he can make all the throws. He knows how to run the offense. He knows how to lead. Obviously, a little bit of the injury bug last year here, but I think what was just said a couple of seconds ago is what's going to dictate what the Giants or the organization and the league thinks of this quarterback this year, which is, can he protect the football? So, I really don't think there's much excuses. The offensive line has actually improved. A bunch of weapons that have brought in to help him get out here. Hopefully, you getting Saquon back sooner rather than later. He's still very optimistic that he'll be in the lineup for week 1. You have the wide receivers. You're looking for guys like Ingram to take a step forward here, and I think it's just he's got to protect the ball. That's the only thing that this guy has to do on a more consistent basis to literally take that next step, and I think he will.
I think there's a lot of correlations between Daniel Jones and the Giants and how you guys feel about him, but on an outsider looking in, looks negatively, but also with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. Their situation. Daniel Jones, injuries, Saquon Barkley, you already brought that up. The offensive line tattered. The Eagles' offensive line was tattered last year. No weapons for him really to throw the ball to. So while I say I'm not sold on him, he really hasn't been put in a position to succeed really in his first 2 years, has he?
I don't think he has. I mean, he hasn't had weapons, and this year he has weapons. So I think this is the year he's got to prove himself. He's got to step up.
Do you agree with that?
Well, I always thought that he had weapons, and
I kind of thought he had weapons before last year when Saquon went down. I thought there was some weapons, just not enough.
I just think it's a completely different league here. I mean, I'd say that almost 50% of the teams in the NFL can complain about their offensive line. I mean, guys like Mahomes don't necessarily have a solid offensive line kind of in Kansas City. You just have to know how to run the offense and actually, make plays. And look, I'm not necessarily saying that he should be, I guess, compared to or playing on the level as like a Mahomes here, but there's no more excuses. You have a second-year offensive coordinator. You know the system. Second-year kind of head coach here. You've addressed some of the challenges that are facing the, offense kind of in general. You're getting your spot kind of running back. Stay healthy, protect the ball, and see what the kids got. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, George with some great jokes coming in here because we're Eagles fans. He's bringing all the heat. If only Daniel Jones had Devontae Smith to throw the ball to this upcoming season.
Listen, George,
obviously, I know
just chill out
as you guys were
here. This is our time here. You had your Eagles talk for the past 30 minutes. It's been a frustrating past couple of years. Leave us alone.
Screwed you with the playoffs.
Yeah, screwed us with the playoffs. We can never beat the freaking Eagles ever.
So I want to ask you, because honestly, you guys traded back. It was a surprise, that you guys traded back there from, I think you guys were at, 11 or whatever after we, jumped you guys there. And you drafted Kadarius Toney, wide receiver, with your 20th pick. George lived in New York. I think his son's in the military there up in upstate New York. So George has some New York connections too. We'll start with you, Mark. Thoughts on Kadarius Toney? I've read some reports of some inconsistency in camp so far, but just your thoughts on him as a wide receiver, as that consolation prize, as that weapon. I mean, honestly, going into the draft, he wasn't even on my radar because he wasn't in that top 3-4 wide receiver group that the Eagles were looking at in the top 12 picks. So what are your thoughts on him as a wide receiver?
Look, it's not like I sat there and watched a lot of Florida games from a college football perspective. It was definitely a surprise seeing them draft the wide receiver that position, even though they traded back here. I mean, look, the only thing that I can say about this guy here, he better be the best special teams player in the history of the world here. So I guess he's got speed, he's got talent. In the NFL, I'm sure one of these guys are going to get hurt, and where he's going to have an opportunity to jump in and go ahead and play here. If he takes some pressure off of guys like Peppers from a special teams perspective and returning punts and kickoffs, which is something that the Giants never actually have. And let's see. I mean, Judge he comes from a special teams background, so if he sees something from a specialty a position from I'm not even sure if he would actually play like a true wide. I mean, they potentially can have him lined up in a variety of different spots, maybe even like in the backfield, the slot. Who the heck actually knows? But he better be a pretty good special teams player, and then we'll I guess readdress that question in 6 to 7 weeks.
Justin, were you a fan of them trading back to get Toney, or should they have stayed at 12 or 11 and drafted somebody else?
When it first happened, I was skeptical, but then I've seen some highlights of Kadarius Toney, and I think Jason Garrett, he can put him all over the field. I mean, when he gets to when he gets acclimated to the offense, and I think he could be a real asset to them. He could be out of the backfield. He could be in the slot, on the outside. He could pretty much be anywhere. And I think that was the draw for picking him. It'll be interesting to see how he starts out and where they put him and how they use him. But I mean, I think they could, if they use him properly, it could really work out for him.
Yeah. I always say that you phrased it right. The initial reaction, we all overreact on draft night, no matter who our favorite team is. We never get the guy we wanted, or if we do, we're way too excited or way too depressed. You got to let it marinate. You got to let it sit for a little bit, and then digest it and see like a week later, 2 weeks later. I always tell people in any sport, don't hold me to any draft night overreactions.
That's
so.
true.
George
agree.
Actually phrased,
right on the head.
Yeah, George phrased one of my questions here pretty well. What your guys' thoughts are of Joe Judge? I mean, seriously, are you sold? Because I mean, that's a great way to say it. Are you sold seriously? Because obviously, as an outsider looking in, multiple guys retiring, unexpectedly. You had the big fight in camp. You guys were 6-10 last year. He's a young, I think he's 38, 39-year-old, second-year head coach. are Giants fans and people that watch this team closely sold on Joe Judge being the head coach of this team now and going forward into the future? Justin, you could take it first if you want.
Yeah, I am. I think he could definitely be the guy for a while for the Giants. I think his style is more like a Tom Coughlin style, like a no nonsense, like just like the old Bill Belichick, saying do your job. I think he really, being from New England, he really had that ingrained in him, and he's really ingrained that in the Giants. And from everything that I've read from players and everything, they love him. So I definitely hope he's the guy. I think he's the guy. I hear things about they make him run laps at practice and he punished them after the fight and whatever. But that's great. It shows he has control of the room. So I think he could definitely be the guy moving forward.
Mark?
So just repeat that question. It's what do I personally think of Judge?
Leading this team, this year and into the future, Joe Judge. Like I said, like he brings up the fight and running laps. I mean, it seems like as an outsider, he's running it like a high school team or a college team, not a professional team.
I mean, if you take I don't know, this is just my opinion here. Just take everything that takes place in any particular training camp, whether it's the Giants and everything, and just completely throw it out the window. There's fights in every single year. There's a fight kind of in training camp. And so what? So the coach made you freaking run a lap. Grow up. I mean, is that really gonna piss you off? And it's not like they're it's not like Herb Brooks in the 1980 U.S. Olympic team where they're kind of doing line to line sprints and where the team's ready to drop dead before Ruzioni has to say something here. Guys, some people made a mistake. Coaches made a mistake. You take a lap. I mean, anybody who's been playing some type of competitive sport, even if it's at the junior high school level, I mean, if you're going to throw a stink about running a lap here, I mean, come on, give me a break here. But from an overall perspective, I think Giant fans want to be sold on Judge. Me, personally, I want to be sold on Judge here. But at the end of the day, here it's a second-year head coach who's coming off a 6-win season. So am I 100% all in on Joe Judge here? No, absolutely not here. I mean, this has been a tough stretch for Giant fans over the past.
What was it? 2012, the last time you guys won more than half your games?
And there was that one playoff appearance with McAdoo before you got blown out in Green Bay and the whole Beckham boat party thing over here. Right. This has not been an easy stretch, so I'm not sold on anything from a Giant perspective. So I think it's more from a perspective of. Well,
can I rephrase this then? Sure. How long is your leash for him then, Mark? Like, are you going to give him the full year and then Judge in the offseason and still give him next year? Depending on how it goes, or if this year's a dumpster fire, or even like another 6-win season, is he done in your book? Does he need to do a certain thing this year to convince you?
You can't. You can't go through your third head coach in the past 6 years. So, regardless of how they actually perform him, I think we're with Judge for another couple of years. I can't necessarily say the same about the GM. Mm-hmm. But then again, here, I mean, I guess it's possible here. I mean, you really have to have almost like a 2 or 3 win season with complete distraction amongst the team for anything dramatic at the head coaching position to change going into the following year.
So Justin, he says, you got a little bit of a long release on Judge. George chiming in that Gettleman's the one that's going to be gone. How about Daniel Jones? Is his leash shorter then, or does there's a lot of quarterbacks every year that come out in the draft that get drafted in the first round. If you guys stink, just like the Eagles, there'll be quarterbacks to take in the early first round. Is Daniel Jones' leash shorter or longer than Joe Judge?
I say give Daniel Jones give him another couple of years. I can't see them moving on after this year, even if it's still a 8-8 season or 8-9 season or 7-10 season or what have you. I see a lot of potential in Daniel Jones, and I hope that comes to fruition this year.
So I think Daniel Jones, Joe Judge, all of it's going to come. I think, and again, I'm an outsider. I think it comes back to Saquon Barkley. He's definitely the best player on the team, in my opinion. At least before the injury, the most talented player on the team. How has he looked? I know he just reported or just started practicing yesterday or 2 days ago. Is it right to think that if he's not 100%, like does your whole season hinge on Saquon Barkley being healthy, Mark?
I don't necessarily think so. I don't think the whole. Well,
he
they
is
have
one
like
of,
a
if
lot
not the
of
best
kind
running
of
back in the league.
weapons and things like that. And I think just in today's kind of NFL, are you really kind of your offensive unit dependent on a running back in today's kind of NFL? I think it kind of helps. If basically Saquon can actually give you almost like 75% of what we actually gave you in his rookie year. You got kind of like an extra game. We're not kind of asking you that much of him. Give us, I don't know, 1,100 yards kind of rushing and another 600 yards kind of receiving here, which is completely doable for somebody of that kind of talent level. If you get any type of number production for them here, the Giants offense is going to be good.
Yeah. Well, do you agree with that, Justin? You were shaking your head yes, like you agreed on all of that there.
Definitely. I think he's an electric player. I think if he stays healthy, sky's the limit. Absolutely.
Actually, Justin chiming in, if Saquon's healthy and Galladay, I honestly, totally forgot Kenny Galladay was even on the Giants there for a half a second. We're talking about all these other guys. Tony as their big, rookie draft pick. Tony, Galladay, Saquon. That I guess actually there's no excuses then.
I think it's also important to kind of understand. It's not like Saquon has had injuries. He got hurt. It's not like he's, hey, you know what? I'm bruised up this week. I can't kind of go. There's not necessarily a track record kind of of that. So hopefully he's healed. He's kind of come back. And yeah, staying.
I think running backs are when an ACL tear happens. Running backs are the position I'm the most skeptical in football with, because it's not necessarily, the straight running. It's the confidence they have when they go to make a cut, especially early on. And then they can hurt something else if their mind is not fully healed and confident in that knee. They go to make a cut and then something happens. So, that's why I won't say I'm sold on him, and the Giants are not, but I also won't write them off, because until I see him on the field, week one, because they're not going to play him in preseason games. Until I see him on the field in week one, I can't make a judgment on Saquon Barkley yet.
And yeah, his whole stick is his ability to cut. So
exactly.
That's going to be a problem if he can't do that.
Yeah.
All right, consistency that you've seen a couple of years ago.
So let's wrap the whole Giants, off season in a bow. We didn't even talk defense and all. We talk offense because the football only cares about offense and fans. Nobody care. I care about defense. I wanted the Eagles to draft defense. I love defense. I love hard-nosed football. I'm older like you, Mark. We like the smash mouth football. So all things considered, Andrew Thomas continuing his progression as that left tackle, protecting Daniel Jones's blind side. Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley being healthy, Joe Judge taking that next step. Justin, what's your outlook on the Eagles or on the Giants, and how do you feel? I don't ask anybody for predictions till right before week one of the season starts. It's always too soon in the offseason to say, I think they're going to win 10 games or whatever. But as a whole, how do you think the Giants season will fare this year?
I think they're trending in the right direction. I think they could definitely improve upon the 6-10 record. Last year they were in a lot of games and they could have won a lot more games than they did. If the ball bounced a few different ways. But I definitely see them improving this year. I think the second year under Joe Judge and Jason Garrett and Patrick Graham with the defense, I think that it could come together nicely. I'm not saying they're gonna win the Super Bowl by any stretch, or but I think they'll compete and they'll play hard and continue to improve.
Where are you looking at them, Mark? Do you agree with what Justin had to say there? Or?
Yes and no. I mean, basically, you get an extra game here, so I see kind of like no reason as to why they're not going 17-0. I mean, you can just kind of like lock it in and kind of like go from there. But yeah, I completely agree.
I love the optimism. 17-0.
17-0. Just
15-2 because you'll lose to the Eagles twice because they're going 17-0.
Hey.
There you go. All right. There you go. Look, they're an improved team, but take a step back here. It's not like we're asking this team to do much to be an improved team here. This is still a 6-win team, and a little worse than that, kind of like the year before that here. So to take that next step here, you're not necessarily asking. I'll tell you what, they better be an improved team, because if they're not an improved team here, you got bigger problems and bigger things that need to be addressed that we're not even actually thinking about right now. To ask this team to get more than 7-8 wins, 7-8 wins is not asking a lot. And if you can actually still kind of like a game or two, kind of like so be it. But benchmark, set it at 8, and kind of like go from there.
I mean, again, it's the NFC East. It's probably the weakest, division. Excuse me, division.
Let's just say Prescott from down in Dallas is coming back 100%, kind of healthy.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly. I mean, I'm not sold on the Giants or the Cowboys because Dak. I mean, that Dak injury, atrocious, and now he's got a sore shoulder too. On top of that, the NFC East is wide open for any team to win at this point. Because obviously, if the Washington football team can win it 7 games last year, anybody could win it with 7 games this year. But on that note, the Eagles, this is an Eagles show. You're here. I like to see outsiders' perspectives on the Eagles. Like you said, Mark, the Giants were a 6-win team. You can only have so many expectations going into this year. The Eagles were only a 4-win team last year. So expectations are low for the Eagles, but we're trying to find ways to quantify what success is for the Eagles this year. So I love Mark, and then Justin. What are your thoughts on, first off, just Jalen Hurts as a whole, as a quarterback in this football league? George is saying it perfectly. Would you take Daniel Jones over Jalen Hurts right now?
Yes.
Yeah, and Justin's agreeing with that. Well, then, Mark, what are your thoughts on Jalen Hurts?
Hold
on. Let me interrupt you.
Yep.
Mind you, I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan. All right. So if you don't want to get muted, you better watch your words.
I mean, look, I think he's obviously got a lot of athletic ability. Mm-hmm. I think it was pretty unfair to stick him in that situation that they stuck him in kind of like last year. So now you actually have a full offseason kind of like with the team, a full kind of like training camp, a lot of kind of like I guess changes from a coaching perspective with the Eagles kind of like taking place here. But Eagles are younger and an athletic kind of like team. So I mean, basically, I'll just lump up the division in a nutshell. You want to kind of go ahead, throw the Giants, the Redskins, and the Eagles in one particular category. You want to give Dallas a game and a half kind of like, edge going into the season. I think that's how I'm kind of like breaking down the division. So to answer your question here, I give the Eagles just as good of a chance to compete within this division as the other 3 teams that are playing.
Justin, thoughts on Hurts and the Eagles as a whole?
Yeah, I think Hurts, with the offseason under his belt and, the more reps and everything and playing with Devontae Smith, I mean, that could be a scary combination. I mean, they could be really, really good together. I think Hurts is a really exciting player. I think if he's given, the opportunity to, prove himself and play how he can play, the Eagles are going to be fine. And especially if Smith produces and their defense helps out, they're going to be fine too. And I agree that the division on the whole is a toss up. I mean, because all that's going to happen is the 4 of them are just going to beat the hell out of each other, whenever they play each other. So it's going to come down to those, intra-conference and conference games, where they play other teams, to really decide it, because they're all just going to beat the hell out of each other.
I mean, there's no better football than watching NFC. The Eagles play the Cowboys, the Giants play the Cowboys, or Washington play the Eagles. I mean, NFC East football is, smash mouth.
Take a look at that division. Are you really going to be surprised if the Eagles win the division? I'm not.
I mean, I won't be surprised. But I'm not going to say the Eagles are going to win the division because they win 10 games or 11 games and have this amazing season. If the Eagles or the Giants win the division, and I'm not saying this to be, rude to you guys, it's because the Washington and Dallas are bad, or worse than they're supposed to be. Because, in my mind, Washington getting Ryan Fitzpatrick, I know he's older, helps that team out a little bit more than having Alex Smith. Their defense is still great. And Dallas, if Dak is healthy, Dallas could score with anybody in the league. So I think they're better than Philadelphia and New York.
Well, Phil, I mean, we're old enough here. I mean, but if you remember when we were younger here, winning 10 games was kind of like a good kind of like a year. It just seems like, if you're not 16-1 or 15 and kind of like 2 here, you kind of like stink. And I think pick one of those 4 teams. One of those teams will get to 10, maybe 11 kind of like wins. Everybody else is basically kind of like going to be in that 6 to 9 range, and that's just the way the division is.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking at for the upcoming season.
Justin.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think it's going to be a close division all year. I think, like I said, they're just gonna beat up each other, and it's going to be kind of a war of attrition. Whoever last man standing kind of thing. I mean, it'll probably come down to the last couple of weeks of the season, but I mean, yeah, 9-10 wins. That's going to do it, and then the others will have 6 or 7, I think.
Yeah, no.
I think the division got better against the rest of the league. So in a lot of different scenarios, I think the division has actually gotten better. It's not to say that they're the best, but in this specific unique situation here, I think all 4 teams have kind of improved from last year.
So that's interesting that you say that, because last year going into the season, I thought the entire NFC East as a whole, anybody could have won it, and anyone could have made it outside of the Packers. I really thought the rest of the NFC as a whole was pretty level. You had 6, 7, 8 teams in my mind that could have all competed for the right to go to the Super Bowl. Whereas in the AFC, it was Kansas City, it was Buffalo. That was pretty much it. That really Tennessee maybe that had a shot, And again, I think this year is shaping up the same way. Where in the AFC, you can pretty much flip a coin, whether it's going to be Kansas City or Buffalo. Tennessee, very smidgen close behind there. But in the NFC, if you win your division, if you win the NFC East, you have just as good of a chance as anybody else of making a run in the playoffs, because, is there really a team that's that over-the-top dominant in the NFC outside of Tampa Bay now? I'm kind of forgetting about Tampa Tom there for a second.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. You hear about Tampa, but I mean, I think the conference on the whole, I mean, it's definitely there's going to be a lot of teams, that can definitely come out of the NFC.
I guess the way I'm saying is the AFC is a lot more top heavy, and the NFC, everybody's bunched more together. So whoever wins the NFC, whether it's the Giants, Washington, Dallas, Eagles, any of them could, all you got to do is get hot at the right moment. And then, once you get to the playoffs, we've seen worse teams make runs in the playoffs. I mean, the Giants weren't a good team when they won the Super Bowl, Yeah,
and this year, this is the first time that it's just the number 1 seed that's going to
that was last year. They did that last year as well. Yeah. So it's different, So you get in the playoffs, you upset somebody and you go on a run.
Yeah.
All right. So again, this is DSM Media. This is Trending for 4 quarters. This is the first in our 3-part series looking at the NFC East. Got Marc Saulino from Statement Games here, season ticket holder of the Giants, one of the best here. We got Justin Connery. I just want to keep saying Sean. I'm sure you've heard it your whole life. I just want to keep saying Sean Connery. Sean Connery fan. Sorry. I was hoping you had some kind of accent when you came on the air. It's the first time I've even seen you on the air. So
no. I just say, they say, are you related to Sean? I say, no, and I don't have his money either. So
yeah, I was just going to say, you should say, sure, I'm just waiting on that check.
Yeah, exactly.
So real quick, before we sign this off and wrap this show up, I want to give you guys each a few moments. Mark first, promote Statement Games. Tell everybody what they're expecting with Statement Games, where they can find it, and you and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So we do have apps. Obviously, Apple App Store, Statement Games Fantasy Sports, or simply www.statementgames.com. We're just a game. We're a game. We've created a different form of fantasy sports. It's free to play. Typical example is Giants are playing the Eagles. I present people with a list of anywhere between 50 to 60 props, hence the company name statements that are specific to that sporting event. Jalen Hurts over or under 175 yards passing. Daniel Jones over or under 425 yards passing. Giants will win by 20 or they'll win by 30. So basically, you go through all these different prop scenarios. You're picking 10 of them. You're ranking them in order of confidence from 10 through 1. So as that sporting event plays out, if your number 10 pick becomes correct, you get 10 points. If 9 through 1 are incorrect, you just have a total of 10 points. You'll play in a league of anywhere between 8 to 12 people. Person with the most points from correct picks wins. It's free to play. You're playing for Statement Games credits, and your goal is to rack up as many of these credits as you possibly can, and when you're ready, you exchange them for a cash gift card of your choice. So we have a whole reward shop. There's probably about 80 different merchants: Starbucks, Nike, Under Armour, Macy's. You exchange your credits for a cash gift card of your choice. So hopefully you guys will be willing to check it out. We actually have our Week 1 NFL game up right now. For anybody who's listening to the show, if you drop a comment in the box, got a couple of weeks, but if you go 10 for 10 with your Week 1 picks, I'll personally come to the table with $200. So got to go 10 for 10 with your picks.
Yeah.
But statementgames.com, in addition to playing for the credits,
I'll make sure I put all the links on Twitter and everything for everybody as well.
Check it out. And I'm a startup.
It's not just football. They do baseball. They do basketball, hockey. I've been trying. I've won a couple of the golf statement game contests. I've done pretty well.
I got an internal bet going for tonight's Dodgers-Phillies game. So,
it was in a rain delay when we went live at 9:00, so I don't even know if the game's come out of the rain delay. So we'll see. But hopefully, that gives you an idea of who we are, what we do, and I am a startup. So please, any feedback that you can give me, good or bad, on what I can be doing better, I welcome it. I appreciate it. I love Statement Games, guys. Anybody watching still, I love playing it because there's no pressure really. It's a free app to play. Jason checking in saying the Phillies are losing, so that means the Dodgers are winning. No details exactly, but yeah. So make sure everybody checks that out. Again, I'll put on my Twitter page and on the DSM Facebook and Twitter page all the Statement Games information, as I will also about your blog, Justin. Justin, tell everybody about your blog, where they can find you. I know you cover you write more about than just the Giants. You cover the Yankees and other stuff.
Nice.
So tell everybody about everything that you can find and where they can find your blog.
Yeah, it's
just have to give you a little talking about that Celtics stuff that you got going on over here. But your other three look pretty good.
Well, I was always a Larry Bird fan, so I can't help that. But
you can't help who you're a fan of. You can just stop being a fan of them.
It's got the Yankees, the Giants, the Rangers, and then it's got that Celtic stuff in there. I was like, what is?
Dude, that would like be me saying instead of a Flyers fan, I'm a Rangers fan. Sorry, Justin.
I'm sorry, Justin.
Promote your stuff.
So basically, it's through WordPress.com. And I just, I've been doing a lot of lately. I've been doing a lot of Yankee recaps and everything. I'm starting to get into, looking more at the Giants and their training camp and everything. It's just basically my thoughts on the Giants, the Yankees. As progressive it's going to be, the Rangers and hockey, and then some college hoop, and I try to hit on everything and try to get to everything, but mainly it's going to be about the Giants and the Yankees. So
awesome stuff. Baseball season's wrapping up, football season's about to start, then we'll have basketball season. It's a great time for sports fans. July gets a little boring after the NBA finals, but after that, August, it's time to start ramping back up the sports here. It's a great time as a sports fan looking ahead. Philly's going to just win every title in every sport, but I'm sure the Giants and the Yankees will have something to say about that. As long as the Mets keep collapsing, so that the Phillies keep cruising, that's all that matters.
Yes, that we can agree on.
Okay, so we got two Yankees fans in the house. That's good. That helps as a Mets fan. I'm still not over 09, the Yankees beating the Phillies, but that's a topic for another night. Again, thank you both so much for coming on. Much appreciated. Again, that's Marc Saulino from Statement Games. Justin Connery, not Sean, from his blog over there at From My Chair. Make sure you check these guys out, everybody. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Great comments. Again, thank you to Football Kelly for coming on in the first half hour. One of the best podcasters. She just dropped her podcast with Mark Farzetta. Farzi was on her show this week. She does some great work there. She's interviewed some of the best of the best. I don't know how she gets all these people to come on her show because I can't get half these big-time guests to come on my show. But she gets every single one. Love her. Make sure you check her out as well. Everybody, think you have a great night. We'll be back next week. Next week, we're going to have the Washington football team being covered. Got some great guests lined up for that. And then the following week, we'll dive into the hated Cowboys. We all here on the screen can agree that we hate the Cowboys, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Cowboys suck.
So,
Absolutely.
I always end shows with Go Birds. But what did Giants fans say? Like as a passing thing?
Go Blue.
Go Blue? So you guys can say Go Blue. I'm going to say Go Birds. We're going to end this show for the night. I got a quick outro, everybody. Then I'll see you guys off the air.
Thanks for having me, Phil.